This is my final list. The top 50 best albums of 2023. In my opinion, this is not Armand Hammer's best work, but I'll still call it great. I think both Billy Woods and Elusive have really great bars in it, and most of the songs here are pretty deep. But I just find this album a bit underwhelming. Deerhoof is still going strong with this album. The vocals and the instrumentals are fantastic, and most of the songs here are pretty good. This rapper made an album by this name, and honestly, I think this is better than his last one. I think that his bars are actually pretty good. It's pretty interesting, and honestly, it's also unique. I think this album has some great bars, lyrics, flows, and beat. I think this is a really good recommendation for people who are looking for more hip hop. I think this is probably the best Foo Fighters album I've heard in a while. I think there's more hard rock songs that are really excellent with the instrumentals and vocals from Dave Grohl than more duds. This album has some great avant-garde style music. The guitars are really nice and smooth. I really do think the instrumentals is relaxing, honestly. It's definitely a really smooth album for sure. I just can't get enough with the instrumentals and the vocals on this album. It's very catchy from track to track. I think the vocals and the instrumentals with the guitars and everything is sounding a little better, honestly, and this is basically Lemon Quig's best work yet. The band Underscores released this album, and I really do enjoy the mix of dubstep and rock. It sounds surprisingly amazing. I think the vocals and the productions are pretty nice, but it can be a bit rough sometimes. This one from Kelsey Ballerini is beautiful and special. I think that the lyrics are very heartwarming and charming, and the instrumentals do fit pretty well in it. This album from Slow Tie has a mix of rap and rock into it, and mostly it sounds pretty good and decent. This Suzanne Sudford album relaxed my soul with some really groove instrumentals, and her vocals sounds nice as always. This album is very charming. This album has some edgy rock vibes into it, and honestly, I kind of had a blast. The Tallest Man on Earth never disappoints me, and this is why. This King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album has a bunch of best songs to date. I think this might be my favorite Lana Del Rey album, mostly because her vocals and the production aren't as bland compared to her previous projects. Also, most of these songs here are heartwarming and more personal to her. I just love the electro production on this album, and most of the features here did pretty well. After 2 years of waiting, we finally have a new album from Genesis Owuzu, and it goes really hard, honestly. The bars, the lyrics, the production are very fantastic, and honestly though, I think this is a step up after his last album. Most songs here on this Jeff Rosenstock album are a headbanger. Olivia Rodrigo is another artist that I've been waiting for to release an album sooner, and we finally have it, and honestly, it's very marvelous. Most of the songs here are more rock styled, and it actually fits, especially with the lyrics on Revenge and Breaking Up, which is pretty crazy. This album has a bunch of disco grooves, and Jesse Ware does flows the boat with it. I love how this album is so majestic, with Carol Jackson's beautiful voice. The instrumentals are very nice, and the lyrics on every song are pretty unique, not gonna lie. Some of the greatest smooth and hard rock vibes into it, and honestly, the vocals sounds pretty nice in it. It's definitely one of King Cruel's best work, honestly. Billy Woods has the greatest bars in this album, and Kenny Siegel's beats are really nice and pleasant. Good stuff. This album is very diverse with different genres, from pop, hip hop, and rap, and R&B with a mix of funk into it too. I think these three fit really well in those types, and honestly though, I can't wait to hear more. This People Little Horse album gives me the vibes, with some alternative indie rock grooves into the tracks that sounds really, really smooth. This album has some pop in it, and honestly, it's fascinating. This album from Luke Combs might be his personal. It mostly talks about age, relationships, and other things about life. It's basically just like a very storytelling from Luke Combs. This album has great flows, lyrics, and beat. I would highly recommend to anyone who wants to hear more hip hop. This album has some groovy country vibes, and the songs on it are very strong. Everything about this album is so dang beautiful. This album has a great concept, and honestly though, I think the story is pretty nice. Especially his bars are really nice too, and also the features he puts into it is very phenomenal. I think this album is underrated with lyrics, her voice, the concept of everything is very nice. Another underrated project that I heard this year is this Blank Thought EP. I honestly think that his voice, his flows, his lyrics are really on point. It's very good. Can't wait to see what he'll do next year. This current album has a bunch of electronic and rock grooves into the mix. And basically, though, most of it vocally are very fantastic. And honestly, though, it's definitely an enjoyable listen from front to back. It's been a while that Sample released an album, and basically, it's worth the wait. Her vocals and the songwriting on this album are phenomenal. And honestly, it didn't really change for the past 7 years. And I think that it's really, really awesome, and I'm proud of that. I think this album was very, very great. I think Shania Twain has a great voice in most of these songs. I think the songwriting is really hitting, even though some of it is a bit duddy, but I personally will tolerate it, and most of it from front to back is fantastic, I'll say that. Very groovy, very upbeat from this Turkish indie band, Altan Gun. Most of it is very, phenomenal with the guitars and everything, like the vocals as well. It's very, very great, honestly. Randy Rogers and Wade Bowen released this EP right here, and basically the songwriting and them vocally together sounds very amazing. The most huge alternative and emo rock songs that I've heard from this Paranoia album are very, very hard and very, very strong. Two rappers that you probably might not know, but I'll put them in anyways. Basically, they have great lyrics, great bars, and the beat are good and decent. This is definitely very, very soft and sweet. And honestly, though, Sufjan Stevens did pretty well. And honestly, though, I'll play a great job on this part. I can't get enough of this Caroline Polachek album, whether if it's the upbeat tempo or the deep cuts. Toxic Band, yes, released this album, and basically though, I really do enjoy it with the instrumentals and the vocals on it is very, very awesome though. I can't really lie about that. I really love her voice in this album, and honestly, the songwriting and the instrumentals along with it too are as well very, very, very soothing as well. Obviously, I had to put this album on this list. JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown made the best of both worlds. Their bars really being so strong and at times funny, and the instrumentals on it are very fire. Really fire album for sure. This EP from YouTuber Dev Lemons made a bunch of really smooth and really charming songs on it, and I find it very amusing. And honestly though, this sounds very, very awesome. At number 1, we have Sunday Best with Feel Good Country. Honestly, I think this is the best country music I've heard. The vocals, the songwriting, and the instrumentals are very phenomenal. And honestly though, I think this is very creative based on the country music right here. Honestly, this is one of the reasons why I got into country. Great stuff. Great job.